Hi, all this is reality recap. All of a sudden, a phone that wouldn't ring altered everything on one fateful night. Not once, not twice, but for the fourth time in desperation as a child fought for air. That one moment sparked the fire of legal storms threatening to destroy the Brown family and bring hidden secrets into the light that cameras never captured. Insiders say. But before we go into the incendiary court documents and sealed depositions shaking Flagstaff, here is what you should know: what the world saw as a gradual disintegration of a marriage was, in the background, a countdown to war. The actual breaking point, however, was when Kody Brown packed up her bags from Flagstaff and moved back to Utah with Truly. It wasn't the beginning of the cracks, but the crack that fractured everything wide open. Kody had hoped for a tenuous peace phone calls, the occasional visit, the facade of civility. But by sources' accounts, that mirage disintegrated, then lay in pieces. The tipping point was just plain heartbreaking, a medical crisis. Truly had a full-blown asthma attack. Kody rushed her daughter to the ER, calling Kody repeatedly. No answer, messages ignored. Hours went by, close to 7 a.m. When Kody finally responded, "Is she okay now? I was sleeping. Had my phone on silent." For Kody, that was not an explanation. It was reality. Her former boyfriend wasn't a co-parent, he was a hindrance. Within weeks, she hired one of Salt Lake City's more formidable family law firms. Her case wasn't put together based on hearsay, but based on Kody's own words and his decades-long actions revealed on sister wives. Court sources say the filing reads like a harsh screenplay, each scene an illustration of Kody's failure as a dad. None stung more than Isabel's scoliosis surgery. A moment legal analyst James Coran has said was catastrophic in terms of custody. But that was just the beginning. Kody's attorneys broadened the narrative, chronicling Kody's emotional abandonment during the pandemic, his disrespect for Kody, and the long-term harm done to Truly. This, they contended, was more than a tale of a disintegrating marriage. It was proof of a father actively stepping away from his child. The image drawn by the court was plain: a man in the flesh during times of crisis, yet emotionally missing, even acknowledging his flaws in public on his own television show. And just when the case was at a boiling point, another bombshell shook the air, a sealed affidavit, this time from Janelle Brown. More surprisingly, rumors indicate Robyn, the wife Kody kept under wraps at all costs, could soon be drawn directly into the mix. This was not looking like a routine custody battle. It was Act 1 of the Brown family's most volatile conflict to date. Kody's camp was ready with counterpunches, criticizing Kody as being bitter, dramatic, and turning his actions into family defense. They were not prepared for Janelle's affidavit supporting Kody. Sources indicate the filing shook up Kody's inner circle. Janelle, who had long been the stable, level-headed voice, wasn't dismissed as an irate ex. Her voice counted, and her affidavit did more than bolster Kody's allegations of neglect. It added something much more incriminating: parental alienation. Whereas Kody's petition centered on Kody's relationship with Truly, Janelle's affidavit brought another dynamic into the courtroom limelight: Solomon and Ariella, Kody and Robyn's youngest, and how they were being treated. Janelle, a woman who had lived in the cul-de-sac next door to Robyn for years, had witnessed events firsthand in Flagstaff. As per a person who knows her testimony, Janelle detailed in gruesome terms what she had seen: a fortress mentality within the home of Kody and Robyn. The outside world, other mothers, siblings, extended family members, was depicted as unsafe, unfaithful, and disrespectful. Legal analyst James Coran delineated the implications: neglect is passive, alienation is active, it is malicious psychological warfare. If Janelle was able to support her allegations with credible first-hand evidence, it would completely change the court's perception of Kody. He wouldn't simply be missing. He'd be manipulative and hurtful. And from sources, Janelle's affidavit was crammed with specific, devastating anecdotes. Her evidence created a picture, not merely of neglect, but of a concerted effort that was heartbreaking and unreal. Janelle's affidavit wasn't pulling its punches. She claimed she saw in person, after Kody had a blowout telephone argument with one of his older sons, the following: "See, your brother doesn't respect your father. That is why we need to be careful." She continued to outline what she termed as a pattern of information control. In her account, older siblings attempted to call or FaceTime the youngest kids, But had those efforts barred by Kody or Robyn, the justification was always the same: they're sleeping, or they're busy. Even birthday and holiday gifts sent by Christine or her children were delayed, turned over days later with a wave-off dismissal, like, oh, look what they sent. It was subtle, but it reduced attachment. But the most dramatic assertion in her petition, insiders indicate, was an overt accusation against Robyn. Janelle swore under oath that she thought Robyn was working to control Ariella. She remembered an unsettling experience when toddler Ariella copied a statement, almost word for word, that Robyn had uttered in several confessionals. After seeing one of her half-sisters, Ariella allegedly took off to Robyn and stated, "She doesn't love Daddy like we do," for Janelle. That was the tipping point, and in her affidavit, she begged the court to acknowledge the gravity of what was happening. The case was no longer only about Truly. It had become a trial concerning the very heart of the Brown family. Christine's lawyers had already established Kody's history of neglect of the children he pushed away. Now Janelle had given him a cold glimpse of what was going on within the confines of the house of the kids he held most tight. The consequence was horrific. 2 interlaced grievances. 1, that Kody left behind some of his children, and 2, that he was systematically pitting the others against their mothers and siblings. The courthouse was now poised for an open-season legal battle. Kody Brown was on the verge of discovering that the thoughtless words he'd uttered for so long on television were going to be turned against him as Exhibits A, B, and C in the trial of a lifetime. We've revealed Janelle's shocking affidavit, one that accused Kody and Robyn of orchestrating a toxic psychological campaign. But now comes the stunning twist. The patriarch fights back. Kody and Robyn unleash a defense strategy aimed not at clearing their names, but at shredding Christine and Janelle's credibility. And at the heart of this fight are court-ordered psychological evaluations, documents that expose the family's darkest secrets. And lastly, the ruling of the judge, a judgment so unprecedented it not only denies Kody Brown his rights, but publicly shames him, limiting his relationship with his youngest children. Today was the day the so-called king lost his throne. Confronted with a double-barreled attack, Christine's petition of neglect and Janelle's affidavit of alienation, Kody's attorneys, sources indicate, figured defense wouldn't cut it. They couldn't delete video testimony that had already aired to millions. So they went a different way, one right out of Kody's own playbook: strike back. Insiders at the court explain Kody's formal response, submitted as a declaration, as more of a manifesto than a defense. It portrayed him not as an absent father, but as a victim of betrayal. He framed Christine and Janelle not as truth-tellers, but as bitter wives who were plotting in a staged plot to destroy him. Legal analyst James Corrin described it as risky. This is called the scorched earth defense. Rather than challenge facts, you undermine your accuser's motives. You say to the judge, they're lying, they're vengeful. None of this is real. In Kody's instance, the accusation was definite: Christine and Janelle had conspired, distorting years of family life into a false narrative of abuse and abandonment. Their supposed objective? To break his attachment to his children while garnering public sympathy. The heart of this backstroke was what his attorneys termed the patriarchal protection doctrine. A brazen and legally questionable hypothesis. It contended that as the patriarch of a plural family, Kody's duty was not to the emotional needs of any one wife or child, but to the survival of the unit as a whole. His strict household rules, his inclination to spend time with Robyn's children, even his refusal to fly out for Isabel's surgery, these, his lawyers said, were not acts of neglect. They were acts of leadership. Hard, agonizing decisions intended to preserve the family from dissolution. In Kody's signed affidavit, which sources describe as defiant and unapologetic, he redefined absence as presence and neglect as safeguard. In his mind, he wasn't letting down his kids. He was the ultimate dad, sacrificing individual relationships for the survival of the ensemble. But that still left the other pending accusation, Janelle's accusations of parental alienation, and that spotlight was now focused squarely on Robyn Brown. Robyn, also on behalf of Kody's lawyers, submitted a declaration in her own name. Sources call it the image of a besieged woman. Therein, she said she had been the family scapegoat from day one. Janelle and Christine envied her relationship with Kody, and that jealousy soured into what she termed a planned campaign to label her a manipulative homewrecker, she alleged. One passage from Robyn's paperwork captured the feud well. On one side, Christine and Janelle accuse Kody of neglect, of leaving behind one child and poisoning the rest with bitterness. On the other, Kody and I claim we're victims of a conspiracy fought by vindictive ex-wives. With stories so incompatible, the court could have only one course of action, the most aggressive phase of any high-conflict custody fight. Sworn depositions, raw, unflinching, and written in their entirety. A deposition is not a discussion. It is a trap one to trap witnesses into their words, reveal fissures in their testimony, and record each misstep, outburst, and hesitation in the official legal record. For the Browns, it became a days-long gauntlet that insiders characterize as strained, deliberate, and sometimes explosive. It began with Kody Brown, Kody's attorney, a man named Mr. Davies, reportedly tried to paint her as reckless and hypocritical, a mother who bent the rules while accusing Kody of breaking them. Davies, Miss Brown, you've claimed Mr. Brown's COVID rules were simply an excuse to neglect. Truly correct, Christine. I said his rules were applied inconsistently. He used them as a shield to avoid his children, Davies. But you did visited family gatherings during the pandemic. According to your reasoning, weren't you putting Truly at risk too? Christine, I was following CDC regulations. My decisions were about staying safe. His were about control and not taking responsibility, Davies. Did you ever tell him he was a bad father to your daughter, that he didn't love her? Christine, that would be cruel. I just told her his rules were strict, and that is why he stayed at Robyn's. He made me have to choose between him and my adult children. A mother doesn't make that kind of choice. A father shouldn't insist on it. Sources indicate Christine stood firm, steady, calm, and unwavering, deflecting every opposition back to Kody's choices. Then it was Kody's turn. Christine's powerhouse attorney, Miss Evans, badgered him for almost 7 hours, with sister wives' footage and his own words to himself. Sources claim this was when the stage, delicate television veneer unraveled, showing the raw Kody beneath. Evans, let's talk about Isabel's 2020 scoliosis surgery. You refused to go, right, Kody? I was not leaving her. I couldn't leave my family in the middle of a pandemic. It was a difficult sacrifice, Evans. A sacrifice you took. Now let's get your daughter's perspective. Plays video of Isabel crying. Evans. Mr. Brown, was she heartbroken on script? Was her suffering edited for drama, Kody? You are distorting this. The show is edited for television. You don't see the hours I spent on the phone, Evans. But what we do see is your daughter begging for you to appear, and you declining legally. That is catastrophic. And from there came the infamous knife in the kidney comment. Evans. You referred to the mother of 6 of your children as a violent metaphor. Do you disavow it, Kody? It was just a metaphor. I was angry. She betrayed me. Evans, did Christine really betray you? Or was your punishment misplaced, directed not at her, but at your daughter? You left Truly because of your anger at her mother, didn't you, Kody? Slapping his hand down on the table. This is a character assassination. I love my children. This is a travesty. Insiders call the deposition a meltdown. Kody was defensive, arrogant, and incapable of apologizing. Miss Evans not only dismantled his arguments, she unveiled the self-portrait he was painting, a father oblivious to his part in the family's downfall. When the depositions finished, the feud was far from resolved. The conflicting testimony had pushed the case into a deadlock, and so the judge, confronted with what he called a situation of epic proportions, exercised his ultimate, most authoritative instrument, a thorough psychological assessment of the entire Brown clan. Court-ordered custody exams are the nuclear option of the legal system. A neutral psychologist intervenes, interviewing parents, children, and occasionally others. They administer personality tests, monitor interactions, and create a painstaking report, one aimed at cutting through spin and lies, providing the judge with brutally honest recommendations. In custody disputes, a psychological assessment isn't merely proof. It tends to be the actual foundation of the ultimate decision. For this case, the court assigned an extremely experienced child and family psychologist, Dr. Anna Sharma, to perform the assessment. For a period of 6 weeks, she interviewed Kody, Christine, Robyn, and the 3 children at the center of the conflict, Truly, Solomon, and Ariella. Her concluding report, purported to be over 80 pages, was submitted under seal. But the sources of its contents indicate that the conclusions had explosive power. Let's lay them out. Sources close to the matter say Dr. Sharma's evaluation of Kody Brown was professionally brutal in its assessment. She found bold authoritarian tendencies and narcissistic personality patterns, tendencies consistent with what many had long guessed. Christine's assessment, on the other hand, was quite different. Sharma's report characterized her as a stabilizing influence and a committed caretaker, just the opposite of the way Kody characterized her in court. Robyn Brown's findings, though, were multifaceted and nuanced. Sharma did not call her a villain, per se, but she did say Robyn was Kody's primary enabler, someone who promoted his unhealthy dynamics and directly helped push her own children away from their extended family. Most striking and poignant were the findings in the children's interviews. At 13, Truly was also bright, reflective, and very hurt by not having a father. She informed the evaluator, "I know he loves me, but he loves being at Robyn's house more." She described her mother as her anchor, the stable person she could count on for reassurance and security. Solomon's sessions identified what psychologists refer to as parental loyalty conflicts. He showed extreme anxiety at only 11 when questioned about his older brothers and sisters. He repeated words like Kody, calling his siblings unsafe or disrespectful. He confessed that he loved them, but clarified, "Dad says we can't spend too much time with them because they might have germs or bad attitudes." It was the classic picture of a conflicted child, caught between innate sibling affection and parental approval. Ariella's interview was the most chilling. Just 6 years old, she repeated the family's story with eerie accuracy. Queried about her sister, she said, "Christine took her away. They didn't follow the rules." She remembered no individual conflicts, merely repeating lines that were disturbingly close to Robyn's words. To Dr. Sharma, this was a classic indicator of parental alienation. Her last recommendations did not leave any scope for misinterpretation. She suggested that Christine be given sole physical and legal custody of Truly, but her report on Solomon and Ariella was even more significant. Sharma asked the court to directly step in to mend the broken sibling relationships and to reverse the impacts of alienation within Robyn and Kody's family. By the time she filed her report, depositions were transcribed and the evidence was gathered. There remained just one step, the final ruling of the judge. The day in court was somber, near weighty, no cameras, no cheering fans, just Kody, Robyn, Christine, and their lawyers sitting in a closed courtroom, anticipating the ruling that would redirect the path of their family. As reported by insiders, the judge was direct to a point. Addressing Kody, she started, "Mr. Brown, this court has seen hundreds of pages of evidence, testimony, and a detailed psychological report. You are a patriarch, a father of many, you say, but the record before me, much of it said by you yourself, tells a different story. That of a father who, when his existence became hard, resolved hardship through abdication, not responsibility. A man who punished his daughter for the imagined transgressions of her mother. When the judge moved to Truly's care, her words were firm. The evidence is overwhelming. Miss Christine Brown has provided the child with stability, love, and support as her primary caretaker for years. Mr. Brown's presence has improved somewhat, but his judgment, especially when it comes to his daughter Isabel's health care, raises significant concerns about his priorities as a parent. So the court made its ruling. Christine Brown, the plaintiff, was awarded sole physical and sole legal custody of her daughter, Truly Brown. That final part, sole legal custody, came down like a hammer. It meant Kody Brown would have no say about Truly's schooling, her medical decisions, or even her religious development. To the law, he was now just a visitor. But the judge's decision went no further. She then addressed the very core of the case, Solomon and Ariella's broken relationship. This court does not interfere with intact family units, the judge elaborated. However, in light of the extraordinary public character of this family and the alarming evidence revealed by Dr. Karama's report, the court is bound to act in the best interests of Solomon and Ariella Brown. That report, she said, left one thing absolutely clear. These children were being actively alienated from their 17 siblings. Siblings who are a critical part of their family dynamics in their place. Solomon and Ariella were growing up in a climate of division and mistrust, something that the court decided was highly damaging. At which point, according to sources, Kody and Robyn leaned forward, shocked. What did the judge mean exactly? The court explained. Robyn and Kody's joint primary custody would stay the same. They would not be removed. But the harm already inflicted could not just be disregarded, so the verdict came down hard. For a minimum of 6 months, all of Kody Brown's parenting time with Ariella and Solomon would be supervised visitation, a severe rebuke, typically reserved for parents who pose a risk to their own children. The judge made it even more explicit: this will not be managed by strangers. A court-appointed therapeutic supervisor will conduct the visits. The aim is two-fold: to prevent any more alienation, and to help create healthy reunion among Solomon, Ariella, and their numerous siblings. Christine and Janelle would be included in these regular family sessions in a direct way, providing the children with ready access to their wider circle of family. The judge concluded with a pointed flourish. "Mr. Brown, you built this family. Now this court is compelling you to let your children stay in it." The blow was crushing. It was not just a courtroom loss for Kody. It was the total destruction of his public persona. He went into the courtroom as the self-proclaimed patriarch of a vast family, and he emerged as a father who was so unfit that he could not even be left alone with his youngest children. It was a hard, humiliating fall from the position he had assumed. For Christine, the verdict was a silent but significant victory. She had achieved freedom, security, and the undisputed right to care for Truly without the chaos and resentment that had clouded her life for so many years. For Janelle, it was poignantly bittersweet. She had battled not just on behalf of her own children's bonds, but compelled the broken system itself to mend, albeit through judicial fiat. And still, the road ahead is not clear. Reunification therapy will be agonizing and long. Wounds that were caused deep over years won't heal in 6 months. Solomon and Ariella are caught in the middle of a conflict they didn't fight, and their healing would most likely be the family's toughest struggle yet. What about Kody and Robyn? They're still in their spacious Coyote Pass mansion, alone like a king and queen of a kingdom of two. Sources claim Kody's fuming, threatening an appeal, raving that the system wronged him and took his family. But even now, he appears not to see the truth. He didn't lose his family. He tore it apart with his own 2 hands. He once referred to himself as the patriarch of a mighty family. Now that empire is in shambles, but of one thing there can be no doubt: the saga of the Brown family is far from finished. So click that like button if you are number Team Wives, subscribe for the next hot reveal, and leave your theories in the comments. Who do you think actually won? Stay shady, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next scandal.